But you know, more people are being reflective on this planet than has ever happened previously. It's a global phenomenon, isn't it? People are looking at their lives. They're examining their relationships. They're examining themselves in terms of how they are in their relationships. And in our meditation for a new age, you know, we want to cultivate the pure thoughts that generate kind words and caring actions. This is so important. And you see, going forward, if humanity is to remain a resident of planet Earth, guess what? Different choices and decisions have to be made. And it's very interesting to even look at the green movement, which does offer a lot that and really addresses some things. But from my perspective, much of it looks like it kind of goes to preserving the kind of lifestyle people already have, rather than making sacrifices that can engender a healthy and good lifestyle for people everywhere. And so there's so much up for you now. When you look at, for example, one of the things we note in the meditation is we want to dissolve corruption and greed. And when you think about any economy that is run on the basis of exclusively on the basis of money, we have inherent problems, and that is corruption or cheating. So let's see. I was watching someone the other day. In fact, I was just in this situation where people were sending in orders for something, and one woman was flashing on her experience of going into a store that sold candies and nuts mostly, and she bought like their high quality nuts. But she was sitting there reflecting about every time she went in, they'd say, how much do you want? And they ask her in grams. She'd say, oh, 500 grams. So they'd sprinkle them out, and they'd say, well, is 560 okay? And she would say, well, okay. Then the next time, well, is 530 okay? And this is one of the ways that this particular store was actually generating more business, because rather than putting the nuts back, they just always overpoured and then just said, is it okay? And people get used to it, because that in and of itself doesn't seem like a very big deal. But when you begin to think, remember I said in that, it's a couple lectures ago, I guess, that I think capitalism has to change. I don't think it will come out the other chute being what it is today. Because you see, it's the way it works is one entity gets ahead, not only by competing, but by getting rid of their competition in one way or another. And it's very interesting right now, because since people can't go just walking into stores to buy normal things that they would, whether it's clothing for the children or whatever, they're all ordering it online. And so those online companies are becoming stronger and stronger. They do offer a convenience. You don't have to leave your home. You can order everything from your home. But on the other hand, look at all the small business people who suffer because of that. In fact, as Amazon has grown in the US, many businesses, smaller businesses, have totally gone out of business. And so we have to think about everything. What are we creating with every thought, word, and every action? Now, I'm not saying don't buy online. I mean, that was sort of, well, first of all, right now, that's how many people are getting things. While stores are out of certain commodities, often the shippers can get it to you. It may take longer. But you have to think about going forward. What kind of a world do you want to live in? Do you want to live in a world where everything sits on the bottom line of financial gain? That has been one of the big contributions of the Piscean Age. And while it's been very good for some people, it's been very difficult and very hard on other people. And unfortunately, you see this pattern that has played out over and over again on Earth. Years ago, I did a lecture that really triggered a lot in people when I said that even this great country, the US, was built on the broken backs of immigrants, for the most part, Italians and Irish, who worked in poverty, lived in utterly overcrowded situations without proper sanitation. And all of this was to get ahead because they couldn't do it, quote, back home. And that has kind of been the basis for the capitalistic society. Now, it is good that people can set up their own business and create a business, but it should come from service. You see, my business, I take a business because it will serve people. It will do something good for them. If I am a purveyor of food, I'm doing a service. If I then, just to get ahead, always overpour whatever they're buying, that's not so good. And yet it is a small thing. And I think people have become so used to it by now that they don't even notice when it's happening. But it is time to begin thinking about what kind of world you want to live in. If it just goes back to more of the same, I don't think we have a hope for getting rid of the plastic. Now, I know it's really difficult, and some of you are committed to using less plastic, and you find so much of it's impossible. Much of the food you buy is in plastic. And if you don't take your own bags, you're given plastic bags. Now, those plastic bags could all be recycled into a very efficient and very clean #2 grade fuel oil, which is what all of the gasolines, kerosenes, propane, all of those are considered in the #2 category. But it's cleaner. It requires less energy to do than certainly drilling and producing and going through all of that. And you could say it's a much more efficient way, but it's not very popular because all those plastic bags are being sent to landfills. And they do break down eventually. If it's in a landfill, I don't think any plastic bag will break down in fewer than 100 years, and maybe more, depending on the situations, how much moisture is there, how much heat, all of that. But it breaks down, but it doesn't really go away, you see, because those microscopic particles then seep out, and they're already in your bodies. They're in the food chain. Any of you who eat products from the ocean, whether it's fish or even seaweed, is contaminated by microplastics. And so while this isn't really a teaching about plastic, it is one of the biggest problems you as a world must now face. And so it is important that you write to the suppliers of your food and say, please, let's use less plastic, because it's literally killing the ocean fowl. And if it doesn't kill them, they eat it. But I don't want to go into what it does to their organs. You can kind of imagine. It's not pretty. But think about it. This is your planet. Your whole world is moving into a new age. And it is up to you to start deciding what kind of a world you want to live in. There was a time when most businesses existed to serve people. That's changed, hasn't it? So what I'm suggesting is that you allow this time, it's kind of a pause in what is your normal life. I mean, if you reflect on it, you may not think it looks all that good. Many of you have become human doings rather than human beings. And that is a profound shift. You're strictly run by your schedules, by the clock, and while some of that may be necessary, that is not who you are, my dear friends, because you see too much emphasis on pressure and schedules and clock time takes you out of your relationship to the divine. And you know, when it's all said and done, the only thing that's really important in life is how deeply you connected to your divine roots and how powerfully you brought through your divine truth, which is that you're not a human being trying to have a spiritual encounter here and there. You are a spiritual being trying to figure out how to negotiate physical reality. And that's a huge difference, you see. It's a huge difference. And you must let that in. That should inform every thought, every word, every action you generate. It should be what motivates you when you get up in the morning. How can I, as spirit, negotiate the trickiness of my life right now. No matter how you see or define your life, I guarantee you, you are more. You are capable of more. More generosity, more love, more compassion, more presence. Really being there. When you're talking to someone, are you really listening, or are you thinking another scenario in your own mind while someone is trying to engage you for some reason? Now, granted, there is a lot of meaningless prattle that goes on, and it's called conversation, but there's not much to it. So I would ask you to think of bringing your depth into all your even passing conversations with people. Bring your depth, your spiritual reality. It's very interesting because, I know that life on planet Earth has so many diversions and so many attractions and so many things to pull you away from your spiritual presence and your spiritual path. You have to think differently. Now, I'm not going to tell you how to think. This is your job. You are all spiritual emissaries. It is as if the divine, the supreme, or God, however you name that great being, it is as if that great being is saying, open your heart and let me shine through that heart to the rest of the world, that a little bit more of my presence can be there. Now, what you may not hear is that every time you open the heart, every time you open yourself and allow words to come through that your ego didn't think up, you should be hearing a thank you because it's coming to you. Oh, perhaps not in words, you see, but in beingness. And thus I challenge all of you to really look at what your life is about. I've had I'm doing personal sessions with people for one full day a week, and many people call and ask me, well, what is my purpose? Well, in truth, you have many purposes, and they change during the phases of your life. And I think it's a little bit of an error to think there's only one purpose for anyone, that they've only come for one reason. Certainly the Buddha didn't feel that way, and I don't believe the Master Jesus felt that way. But they came to address the needs of those who are suffering, or of those who don't quite get who they are, or who don't quite understand their own divine connections. These great beings, and there are many more, they have come to love you into a greater rendition of yourself, you see? But life force is a gift. Some traditions call it prana, that beautiful streaming ability to stay alive. You get it from Earth, really. This is one of the reasons you should be thanking Earth every day. You get it from the sun as well, every day. And so if you really look at things, you say, well, wait a minute. Humans are of a higher category than those plants or those silly little animals. Well, I tell you this, the life force that is in any plant or even an insect is the same life force that's in you. But here's the difference. There is form and there is function. And so the form of an insect channels function in a different way than the form of a human. The form of a tree channels its life force in a different way, or its function is different because of its form than that of a human. But that's the main difference. Life force itself is exactly the same. And this is why you must see sooner or later that you are inextricably connected to everything, every being. Every being. All those insects you don't like, they are your brothers and sisters. Oh yes, perhaps at a different level, but they are your brothers and sisters. And so I urge all of you to recognize that from the perspective of the divine, maybe life forces just appears to be a kind of lively soup. And each person has a straw in the soup, and they drink of it, and they become what they will, or they use it in the way that they will. Some use it for very high-level creativity. and they do wonderful things. Others use it perhaps in less well-advised ways. But however they use it, the frequency that they encode upon that life force is the level of the divine that they are capable of reflecting. So if you see someone who is truly a power monger and doesn't mind crushing every other business in town so that I can have it all, they too are reflecting the divine, but the lower frequency. Now, every frequency that could possibly exist is within this huge spectrum that we refer to as divine light. You may have another word for it. It doesn't really matter if you just understand what I'm talking about. The divine's thought process emanates all these, in the universe, all these wondrous stars and galaxies and all sorts of beings. It does that at the microscopic level too, or even the subatomic particle level. These are all elements of divine light that come forth. And all of you have many of them that go into making a body, that fill you with a kind of consciousness. But you see, if you look around, you will see that not all humans have the same consciousness, do they? They don't all respect the same things. They don't even all want the same things. And so those whose wants, needs, and desires are really triggered around the self at the ego level, they are still reflecting something about the divine. Maybe they're very creative. Maybe they are manifestors. They just don't care about anybody else. So they're reflecting the lower frequency of some form of energy. As you pursue your spiritual awakening, you systematically move to higher and higher frequencies, and you reflect that. So whenever you say and mean, thank you, or I'm sorry, or I love you, you are reflecting some part of the divine, at least some part of the full spectrum. Maybe not the whole thing. But the higher you move the frequencies of your thoughts and your words, the more of the divine can come through you to love and bless humans, animals, plants, minerals. It's all part of the divine, you see. Nothing is truly separate. Now, I know you've probably heard that from many spiritual teachers. You've read it in many spiritual books. And most of you kind of get that as a concept. But what I'm challenging you to do, to use this time well, is to go deeper, to move into a greater reality. That is what is important for you today. But what I would like for you to take from our meeting today, I'm giving you what in the East is called a direct transmission. Now, sometimes if we do it here in the West in words, but often my teachers did it in the form of energy. I'm doing it in the form of energy as well. And some of you might feel me, or at least emanations of my energy interacting with your third eye right now, because I really want all of you to come away from this meeting seeing the world and seeing yourselves a little bit differently. And to do that, you can't use just your outer seeing, because the world's pretty much going to look the same to your eyes. You have to use a deeper type of seeing, the seeing of what is called the third eye, that part that can grasp, or let's say apprehend, the presence of the divine, even if the eyes cannot see it, the ears cannot hear it at a physical level. That part of you that has a vaster way of knowing, of sensing differently. That's the part of you that I'm sending energy to right now. And I hope you will just be open and let me work with you so that you can go out and begin to integrate what your third eye sees and not just be so limited with what your physical eyes see. They're very important, of course. But there is another way of seeing, another way of seeing the divine that the physical eyes cannot do. The physical eyes see the manifestations of the divine. You look up into that beautiful starry sky at night and you see all the manifestations of the divine. Or during the day, perhaps you receive the blessing of the sunshine. And you can perhaps intuit that that is part of the divine. It's doing what it's doing through the sun, but it's also doing something through you. And you see, the sun is a beautiful symbol for you to let your heart role model on. It's always emanating light. And that's what you want for your own heart, you see? And so you can kind of perhaps sense it a little bit with your normal perceptual organs. But if you learn to cultivate seeing with that third eye, you will be amazed at what you see. You will be talking with someone and suddenly you see the suffering. And perhaps you see the smiling face they have. It begins to look like a mask. Not that you judge them for that, but to go to compassion, because this is what they can do now. Maybe they have a smile that says, please accept me, please accept me. And they just think they're smiling. But when you begin to see through the third eye, you see more than the obvious. You see beyond the obvious. And perhaps you see a little animal struggling in one way or another, maybe to feed its young or whatever. Can you see the divine in that little being? Yes, I wouldn't be putting it out if this were impossible. When you go out, and particularly those of you who live near the ocean, you have wonderful waterfowl. Try to see the divine in all of those birds. Try to see that the fish that are out there do not just exist to be food for humans. That's the way a lot of people relate to them, and other animals as well, as if they don't have spiritual paths in their own right. But you see, because you are all part of whatever this singularity was, and I know people describe it in different ways. When the singularity burst in this great explosion that brought forth the universe, not only was a part of your awareness watching it, a part of your awareness was in it, and still is. And so when you look out, you're only seeing different reflections of yourself, not at the personal level, not at the ego level, not at the personality level, at the real level, where you come to grips with one thing that is it's what all of you took form in this lifetime to understand, that you are divine. And I know, I tell people, oh, you're divine. People call, how are you? Oh, well, I'm okay. No, you're divine. I say that, and they, oh, yeah, I know, I'm divine. And I think, what a response. Oh, yeah, I'm divine? As if that's something in the background. That's who you are. In that meditation where you are asked to call upon your future self, I think it's very interesting as I watch what people do with that internally. My future self, well, yeah, it's probably better than this self. Well, maybe that's my enlightened self. Well, maybe it's yourself having evolved enough in its connection to the divine that it is no longer susceptible to becoming sick by viruses. Or maybe it is a self that is so compassionate for the suffering of all beings that it only wants to help them. Or maybe it's something else. But you see where I'm going. It is the most important thing you can do, is to understand your connection to the divine, however you name it. The name really matters a whole lot less than your invitation to become it. I mean, and you don't even have to make this up. It's already happened. You just have to recognize it and know who you really are. And I know that sounds very vague to some of you. But you see, as you develop spiritually, one of the things you might notice is that your mind has to learn to work at increasingly more and more subtle levels. Because we'll have your outward energies, the energy that you spend when you're working in the garden, or those of you in snowy areas and shoveling snow. There's a kind of bioenergy that you use up for that. And that's important. But there are indeed many, many more levels of energy that are very, very subtle. How the divine loves you, connects to you, enhances and blesses you. It's all done on some form of energetic interaction. But if it's very subtle, particularly people who are reflecting lower vibrations of the divine, they don't even perceive it, you see. And so it takes some training. How can you learn to perceive it? Using that third eye. It sees so many things that the physical eyes cannot see. And as the third eye opens and becomes more and more functional for you, you will find there is a direct correlation to the ability of your heart to model on the sun. It may be the sun of this solar system, or it may be what is called the galactic central sun. And that's probably not what most people think it is, but that's a lesson for another time, perhaps. What I want for you is to bask in the radiance of the divine. Let it heal you when you need to be healed. Let it inspire you when you need to be inspired. Let it fill you with confidence, not arrogance, but confidence that you are up to handling whatever is laid before you. And frankly, for some people now, they're facing very difficult things, either in their own life or the lives of family members. People are worried about earning a living. Many people don't have a way to earn a living right now. And so the stresses are very great, but you are up to it. In fact, you came to do this part of your life very well, to do it with kindness. And so everything has multiple sides to it. You see, even nature, which loves you and brought you forth, can also love and bring forth great storms that kill people, that demolish towns, and so on. So you have to recognize that nothing is either or. That's a very immature way to look at it. Both and is the way to see everything. And so as you go forth on, if you're really honest, on your own path, you will see moments where your mind isn't so beautiful. Something happens and a thought just comes. You didn't think it up. A thought just comes. Oh, get out of here, person, or you're in my way. Or, oh, get out of here, dog or cat, or whatever it is. And you may not be really proud of that moment if you think about it. I just want you to think about it and be aware that it happens. Not obsess on it. That's another use of the mind. But just to recognize, oh, my ego personality slipped in and was impatient. Some people are impatient more with others. Other people are more impatient with themselves. But either way, when that impatience comes up and you have thoughts or words that come out of it, you're reflecting a lower level of the divine, you see? And the whole idea is to move into the highest frequency you can embody and reflect. And believe me, as you learn to do this, there is nothing that can make you sick. How could it? Do you think God gets cancer? Now, I know that sounds silly, but you're God. You've just forgotten. And you have to see it, of course, with humility and reverence and not just some egotistical thing. Oh, I'm God. Some people do seem to think that way. But that misses the point. You are being called to raise to the highest level of functioning of this entire life. The earth is at a critical juncture moving into the Aquarian Age. The global karma is come forth and has ripened. Always hold open the possibility that you will learn to see this and everything else in a different light. And as you work with that third eye, as you nurture it, as you let it feast on the energy and love of the divine, you will be surprised. Sometimes you see many different explanations, not just one or two, maybe not even 3, but 15. Many different explanations for what is happening or what you perceive to be happening. because we always have to reference the fact that the mind may not be clear. It may be stuck in ego, or stuck in patterns of prior incarnations or prior parts of this life. Their consciousness is very complicated. And yet, you are striving to become who you really are. It is who you have always been. And most of you don't go to that place where you can sense your eternality. But I encourage you to do that. Your modus operandi should be compassion. Your goal, realization of the divine. And that should inform your every thought, every word that comes out your mouth, and every action that you generate toward others. Now, I know some people see this as a kind of a airy-fairy kind of thing. No, I want you to ground that reality. I want you to bring it with you concretely into the physical world. That when you see anyone else, your business competitor is not just your competitor. He or she is a part of you. It's another part of you, because you are not confined simply to that little body that sometimes gets sick. We have to get rid of that notion, you see. I know it's a big assignment. Being in one reality and being in another reality. So you are in your physical reality. It's a concrete reality. Love that reality. Don't get caught up in all the things that go on there, but love that reality. Seek to bless it on a daily basis, as if God has only one person to bless the world through, and it's you today. Now, that's not actually true, but if you go out and you live your life that way, I think you will find there's far less conflict, not only with other people, but with yourself as well. And there's much more joy. There's much more peace, because you are in sync. You choose to be in sync with the divine. You see? So we must start with that motivation. It's very important. And then each of you will bring that beauty into your life however you do it. But be aware of it. It is your destiny to evolve into a level where your body is and your mind is so full of light, divine light, that nothing can harm you. Indeed, your eternality has never been affected by anything. Anything. It was never born. It never died. It has never suffered, nor been sick or felt weak. It just is, because it's part of the divine.